Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Samantha Johnston. I'm the executive director and curator here at Colorado Photographic Arts Center. Thanks for coming to our panel discussion. I know we have a small group, but we're using mics because we are recording this. We are a nonprofit photography center dedicated to exhibitions and community outreach and education programming. A big thanks to our funders, Bumpy Stanton Foundation, SCFD, the WC and EJ Thornton Foundation, and a huge thanks to the sponsors for this show, specifically Digital Silver Imaging for printing Leonard's work. We're going to start today. Both artists are going to give a little background about their work and the bodies of work that are here, and then we're going to get into some questions and have time for Q&A. So we're going to jump right in and get started. Who wants to go first?
Hello, everybody. I'm Leonard Suryajaya. I'm based in Chicago. I grew up in Indonesia. And the work that you see in the gallery comes from a body of work that I've been developing since 2022, right after COVID, when borders reopened. And in the body of work, I get to see my family again, but then also kind of work through a lot of big questions surrounding family bond, and then also my relationship with my husband, who is not recognized in Indonesia, but then also the push and pull between what does being an American would mean, because the body of work coincided with my process of applying for naturalization. And that work I called Parting Gift is mixed together with photographs that I made in 2024, right before the election, when I went down from Michigan to Alabama on the world's longest yard sale. So to me, when we were talking about how to put together a show, what would make sense, I think it's just kind of amazing being able to put together my urban family in Indonesia and then my community in Chicago, but also mixed together with the people that I met along the way on the yard sale, as a way to put together these seemingly divergent backgrounds into one visual field. And yeah, I feel like that's a quick introduction of the work.
Hi, my name is Matthew Finley, and the body of work I have here is An Impossibly Normal Life. To give you a little background, I started this project in 2020. As a lot of us had a lot of time on our hands, I was doing some research on my family. My parents had divorced when I was a baby, so I don't really know my father's side at all. And I was, on Ancestry.com looking up some family history. And I mentioned it one day to my mother on the phone. I said, I'm doing this research. And she said, "Oh, I think your dad might have had a brother who was gay, but he died young." And I came out to my mother over 30 years ago, and she's never mentioned this thought once in 30 years. So my mind blew up a little bit that this could even have been a possibility. And because when I came out, my family is very religious, and I felt very alone at the time. So the thought of someone in my family being so close, going through some of the same things I did, really struck me. And I knew I wanted to make some work about it, but I also knew that she may be misremembering. This may not even be the case, but a part of me really wanted it to be true because I wanted to have that family connection. So, not having access to his story, if he was even true, I decided to place this uncle in a parallel universe where he could be loved and accepted his whole life. Because if I'm gonna invest this time and energy into this person, I want to give him the best life that I could. So decided to collect vintage photos to tell his story, to create his story. And so I started scouring eBay every day for a good 4+ years and collected those photos that you see there. And I knew I wanted to interact with them in some way. And I tried a bunch of different things, markers, crayons, and I kept coming back to glitter because it just captured the joy and the fun that I wanted to imbue into his story. And plus, it related nicely with queer nightlife and drag. So it really felt perfect for this project. Um, and yeah, just pushed on and created more and more as I collected more and more, and eventually decided to organize them in a photo album, and then that led to the book. Yeah.
So, as you both talked about, both of your work begins very close to home. And was that a conscious decision or something that took time to come to? Leonard, maybe because your family is so involved in your work.
Yeah. Um, so when I first fell in love with photography, which was when I was in my third year of my undergrad, I didn't started photographing my family. It wasn't until after I applied to grad school, and I was in California before. When I was applying to grad school, going through interviews and everything, I got a message saying my grandma had just passed away and I couldn't fly back to see her. And I think that really started this reckoning that, oh, I I am gonna stick around here, and this is gonna be the new norm in my life, not knowing the exact update of my family and how do I still stay connected with them. But also at the time, I hadn't come out to my family, and so that drive of wanting to make a family photo became this sense of purpose to still be close just in case they would kick me out or exile me for being gay. Because in Indonesia, gay marriage is not recognized, and I could be prosecuted for making art that normalizes queer kinship. So for me, I went through a long period of time of figuring out what exactly that I was trying to achieve with art making, because in the beginning it was really about my own selfish need of staying connected with them, and also kind of push the boundaries to see whether they were gonna kick me out or not. But after 10 years after COVID and after going through the immigration process and not being able to go back to Indonesia for 5 years, um, when I started this body of work, that question was really prominent for me because I asked myself, what makes a great family portrait? And thinking that family portraiture usually conveys harmony. It conveys a sense of lineage and a sense of unchangeable characteristic of a family. But then in my case, my family experience is always so drawn towards rupture. And I think I also get a sense of realization by my family continually appearing in my work that could also portray them as somebody who is against the Indonesian traditional values. So for me as an artist, I asked a lot of questions how to be responsible with that. And I also went through this period with my family when I came out to my mom in 2014. When I was in grad school, she told me not to tell my dad and that she would appreciate if I didn't advertise my queerness when I talk about my work. So there was a lot of like baggage that needed to be figured out. And I feel like I used this body of work, Parting Gift, to kind of test that family dynamics to see how much really are you against me being queer, but how much is it that you would be willing to give to me because we're connected as family? So that question between family bond and then also personal beliefs become a big question as I went through the body of work. And I feel like throughout the years that I've been making work with my family, this body of work right now really cemented my my audacity, but then also my Americanness in being an individual, because the culture where I come from, it's very tight. Everybody is a collective. Uh, and in this body of work, I finally addressed my relationship with my partner. I told my cousins, my relatives, that we're married and everything. So the progression of the relationship, I feel like also becomes um, an inspiration in why some of these photographs were made. And the photographs were also made at these heightened moments in the culture, like a wedding, um, and also um, the idea of parting gift also allows me to kind of create a nice package to leave to my home country, but then also to bring to my new country. Yeah. So the relationship with my family really transformed since the beginning. And I feel like now I'm finally at a place where I can trust them and know exactly what I'm getting out of them. That's why also technically I trust them enough not to move when I go back and forth between the camera and the frame. That's why I insert more of myself also in the work, like that photo over there and that photo over there. So I photograph with a film camera. So I can only take one shot before I go back to the scene and go back to the camera. But because I've been working with them for more than 10 years, I know that they will hold still for me to like create these images. And I feel like these images become that testament of the relationship that we built throughout the years that we make art together. Yeah.
Um, for me, the project has been kind of healing, in its, I think, similar to yours, a healing in its own way as far as wish fulfillment. A lot of the story that happens in the project is, one of love, unconditional love and support, which I don't feel that I had. So it was a way to kind of experience that in a way and heal some of the wounds through this uncle character and his lifelong, support and encouragement and love that he experiences. So it was in relationship to my family in that way. Um, yeah.
Thank you. And so it's a kind of a two-part, but Matthew, you've spoken about moving from acting and using other people's words to image making as a way of finding your own voice. And Leonard, your work stages situations rather than documenting them as is. So how does construction or performance help you tell the truth rather than obscure it? And I guess whoever wants to go first, but Leonard, when you speak, I think it's also, you just touched on how you're photographing with the sheep film, but how these are all constructed, I think is great to speak to, because the construction component to me is something that always has drawn me to the work. I mean, both are constructing in a way, but yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think of my photographic frame as a stage or an altar. And I think it also gives me a lot of comfort, like personally being able to control what the view of the universe that I'm creating in these photographs as a way for me to heal and gain a sense of power in myself. So a lot of the time, I pull fabrics that I could find in my family's home. A lot of the time, also, I see what kind of event is going on and try to make the scene. So, for example, this photograph, I only needed to bring my lights because the backdrops were part of my sister's engagement ceremony. So in that instance, all I did was set up my camera and the lights and also figured out what gestures the figures would be doing. Um, in other photographs, for example, the couple, my friend Brittany and her husband, that was taken in my studio in Chicago. And with that, I had wrapped all of the cans that I acquired during quarantine with patterns that I made as a way to create like a memory to let go of the quarantine blues and the traumas, but also as a way to kind of celebrate a new life coming in. So a lot of the time, I try to be more grounded in understanding what is available to me and asking what can I transform with what is available to me. And I think my visual language comes from my experience growing up in Indonesia. Indonesia is a tropical country, a lot of noise, a lot of smells, a lot of colors, a lot of patterns. And to me, because I didn't have a clear cut and easy relationship with my home country and upbringing, I find that making photographs helped me connect with all of those questions. Um, a little bit about my background. I was born during the time when Chinese culture was not considered a national identity in Indonesia. It wasn't until the year 2000 when there was a social reform that basically said anyone who was born in Indonesia is in fact a full citizen. And I had grown up at a time when Chinese language, culture, um, rituals were outlawed. And I grew up with stories from my parents, grandparents having to hide and everything. So for me, that was 12 years old, and I moved to America when I turned 18. So when I came to America, I didn't really have a good sense of what my home culture really is because it was not a part of my life. And I found that by using photography as a stage, as an altar, I get to bring in all of these layers that were confusing and create a new hospitable and also fantastical images that is also intimate for me to kind of like reconnect with my family and my background. So I make the photographs with film camera. I use Kodak Ektar, um, which really is really helpful because Kodak Ektar is 100 ISO. So when I go through all of these X-rays, going from Chicago to Indonesia, I would have the least chance of my films getting fogged. So, and I've been using the same film and the same process for the past 13 years. Now I know what to expect from the film. And I feel like because I've stuck with the same process for 13 years, now I get to push and kind of see like what new things I can make. Uh, that's why collapsing the works that I make in my studio or in Chicago and Indonesia with the work from the um, yard sale, um, to me, it's so exciting and dynamic because the photographs that I make at the yard sale, I cannot direct moving a lot of things. It's literally like, oh, I see something interesting. I have to make this photograph right now, and I have to work with the people in working together because the process takes a while, setting up the camera, the light, and everything. It takes minimum 15 minutes. So these people who are shopping, who are selling things, for them to agree to be photographed, uh, it feels like a big commitment because there are a bunch of people behind the camera watching the process because it's like an active marketplace. So to me, it's just so exciting putting these two approaches together into one exhibitions, while also staying true to my visual language. I love colors. I love good lighting. So I feel like that's a common thread, even when I cannot direct extensively or put a lot of things in the photograph. Yeah.
After studying acting for a number of years, it wasn't that hard to transition to behind the camera. And even even then, though, I think what I took from acting was working with other people, collaborating and directing them. So most of my works have something to do with my queer experience or past, and I usually have someone else kind of standing in for me, in one way or another, whether that's a story or emotionally. So with this body of work, it's not that different, even though, I'm not necessarily directing the people in the photos. I am picking which photos to use and telling a story that way. And the uncle character, like I mentioned, is standing in for me in certain aspects. So it's kind of an extension of that um, way of working.
I love also, Matthew, in your series, how the performance of the images you select, how you choose to use the glitter, all of that, how that thread ties through and the story really, even though they're all different people, that thread comes through in the work, which is really fantastic. Um, Queerness appears in both practices, not only as an identity, but as a way of working. And can you expand a little bit more on that? Maybe talk a little bit about the book and kind of how that's come together for you, Matthew.
Sure. Well, for me, like I said, all of my work seems to have to do with my past in my life, and thus my queer experience, because it's part of me and who I am. So um, there's always that element, and the whole reason that I make work, I feel like, is to share my experience with someone else so that they might feel less alone or might see some sort of help through a struggle. That's why I make work, is to have that kind of community and connection with someone else. And this, in doing this body of work, and wanting to not only do the gallery aspect but book aspect. One of the reasons I wanted to make a book is so that it could get further than the gallery can, that it could get into more hands and might help. There's so few examples of positive queer history out there, that even though it's a fictional story, I hope that it might give someone some sort of feeling of connection to a positive, positive energy, a positive past, some little bit of hope if they need that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the book, is to hopefully um, expand the reach further than I can with gallery shows.
What's the question?
You, I feel like you've touched on it, but how, the queerness appears in both practices. So I feel like that you've talked about it already with your work. And I think it was really, especially with this project, with Parting Gift, kind of confronting those things with your family. I think for me, seeing these photos and knowing that history is also important, that there was not this love of, oh, you are queer and we want you to not tell your father, we want you to not, but then now there's seems to be this happiness and supportiveness.
And I think also because I learned from the lack of visual representation of Chinese culture uh, in Indonesia, I see that as the most optimistic way of also showing how queerness can be a part of the way um, I can show my experience and my family without going against, say, the law. Because, like, one, I mean, if I were only trying to show my queerness, I could either go the easy route and show, more full on my relationship with my partner, or more sex based. But instead, I lean into how my family and my home culture treats question of sexuality and relationships. Like in Indonesia, nobody just talks about sex openly. And to me, I see that, oh, okay, I'm not going to talk about my sex life at all with you because you don't talk about your relationship. And also the way that I see my parents show intimacy with each other, it's almost like not uh, apparent. It's kind of awkward sometimes. I don't think I've seen them kiss in the mouth at all. So to me, I can either see that as a way for me to insert myself, or I can just be afraid of the implications of being queer. So I chose to use their ways of expression, but then finding nuances in which I can expand the way that they would think about intimacy and relationships, to ask questions instead of to just advertise my queerness. So I think, to me, it's also this goal of showing my home country that, hey, there is a way for us to show that queerness exists that doesn't necessarily challenge what the majority of people believes in. Because at the end of the day, it's just a photograph of a family together. Of course, the radical act of normalizing queerness becomes the point of contention, but also I feel like that's when the art really works, when it asks hard questions while also um, pointing at the challenging reality. And I feel like that's what I hope to show um, to my home country, because queerness exists. And I think in some culture in Indonesia, before, you know, Indonesia is the most Muslim majority country in the world. And there are tribes that dealt with themes of queerness in a way that is um, almost part of their daily life. But I think because there are so many different voices and different powers in politics, people just forget about the reality of life. And I feel like that's truly what I hope to point at, and using art as a way to kind of prick open the way that we see and understand connections with one another. Yeah.
Thank you. I've been bouncing around my questions because we've been getting to them. For artists who maybe are struggling with permission around personal work, what is one thing you wish someone had told you earlier as you got into making more personal work?
Oh, I I feel like, because I don't think whatever somebody would tell me would make a difference, but I feel like going through making all of this, honestly, what I can say is don't ever stop working on yourself and using art to help work on yourself. And I feel like, because I've been in the closet, I've been in depression, I've been feeling pessimistic, especially when recognition was not there, or when it felt like I was just doing the labor and the hard work of trying to connect people together with no clear reward or gratification. But for me, it was really for my own mental development, that I want to see that I was not just broken as what my home culture would mark me. And I feel like it's been amazing for me in seeing the transformation in my life that I get to achieve through art making. So I guess my advice to artists who works with personal work, I would really stress uh, the goal of making art has to also support your own self development. Uh, because at the end of the day, that's what I want out of my life. I don't want to just be stuck in the depression of all of the hard questions that I didn't know how to process. And I feel like the more ambitious, the more courage that you put into the process, it will help you navigate your next moves. And I think transforming with action is more effective for me than just sitting down and to think about the solution. Thinking itself without any action will just make you more depressed. So at least do something about it, and then use that as a way to see where to navigate next. And I feel like, especially in themes of personal archive, personal growth, and personal mental blocks, you need to be ambitious and courageous and know that that's just work. That's why we call it a practice, because it's an ongoing process to keep transforming. Yeah.
I think I would say don't be afraid to be specific. I think that for me there was some fear. All of my work has been personal, but there was some fear at the beginning to want to try to make it as general and as appealing as possible to as many people as I could. And I think, that's natural. That's a normal place to start, but don't be afraid to keep getting more specific. And it's easy to be afraid of, like, this is so specific to me that no one else is going to care or be interested, but it's probably that thing that's going to make it interesting. And hopefully make people engaged or think about something differently. Um, So that would be my advice.
It's great. Thank you both. I want to leave time for questions. If anyone has them, I'm going to pass the mic so we can have it recorded. But thank you both for sharing more about your process, how you make the work, getting this work here. So thank you. Does anyone have questions?
I missed the beginning, so you might have talked about this, but I was curious about the garage sale. So would you just come up, see a garage sale and say, "Oh, that's really cool. Hey, do you guys mind if I take your picture?" And then just set up and go ahead, go like that?
So the yard sale commission happened in 2024 from the New Yorker. So it's uh it's an epic thing in the Midwest. Basically every first weekend of August, 6 states, 700 miles, Route 66, people would do yard sales. And if their house is on that route, they can just place all of their old stuffs in their yard. But there are also community centers, campgrounds where people would come and set up tents to sell. So it's like a trade shows, and it's like an international destination for people who loves like antique stuff. So it's like a big thing that I had just learned uh, in 2024. So every August, this happens, and when I was asked to drive down with Peter, they gave us the map of the yard sale from Michigan all the way to Alabama, 4 days, and we had to drive all that the whole route and see what could be interesting. So then we would get to one place and then we would look around and kind of gauge the interest because, people are trying to make a living and some people don't want to be photographed because they're so busy selling. Some people don't trust their photographs to be taken. But in all of these photographs, thankfully, everybody was interested. I had to explain to them that I'm using a film camera, so you have to stay still and you will not see the result. Would you do that? So thankfully, all of them agreed to do it. And also, what I found out that um, there are people, for example, Tim from Tennessee. Uh, I I asked first. I asked his brother if he would want to be photographed, and he denied. But he said, "Oh, my brother loves this kind of shit. Go ask him." I asked him. Not only did he agree, he then go on and pick his costume. He was just wearing a t-shirt and just plain t-shirt, but then knowing that his photograph was going to be taken, he picked out the helmet, he picked out the shirt, he picked up his gun, and also you can kind of tell in the photograph, but he went as far as hanging a metal American eagle on his crotch. But to me, that is a bit much. So I told him to just turn away a little bit, but you can kind of see it hanging. But then it kind of like shows the way that people have relationships with being photographed. And when I photograph Elijah, the Amish family, because everybody had to sign a model release. And when I asked him to sign, I asked him, "Oh, do you have an email so I can send you these photos?" Like, we don't got no emails. Or we don't even got a phone number. So, but then they were just interested in the process, and I feel like that's how it all came together. Um, yeah. Yeah, it's a 4x5 view camera. So it is like a scene seeing that, in the wild, especially if people didn't know what it was, but people just thought of it as like, oh, you're wearing a Harry Potter cloak to take our photograph. And that's interesting. Uh, and in a lot of these photographs, when I made the photograph, there were a lot of audience. Um, when I made that photo, there were a lot of like uh boys with no shoes in the mud watching us taking photographs. So it's just like really cool seeing like how people on the route like see this process. Yeah, but it's a really cool yard sale if you ever want to go on it. Yeah.
What you hearing about people that it's still moving that she get it here
Yeah. 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 It's a whole different thing, but also I feel like to me, especially now with social media and AI creating images, I feel like there is that sense of comfort knowing like this process hinges on human to human connection. And I feel like because it is so because their idea of what that process is has always been through old movies, seeing like, oh, this is how people in the past make photographs, so they were interested in also seeing how I work. And it's I think it it was nerve-wracking at first because we drove from Chicago to Detroit to start the route. And I think going through state lines and seeing like, oh, not a lot of people look like me anymore. Oh, we're the only ones that stand out. Um, and for example, I also made one photo that's not on here, but this lady, um, she just stared at me at the same campground as the Amish setups. She just looks at me from left to right as if she's like trying to like guess what I'm trying to do. It's almost like she's about to like fight me, but then as soon as I say hello, and then she was like, "Oh, you have the whitest socks." Because people there don't wear shoes. And then after hearing that, I was like, oh, okay, you're not about to like kill me or something. You're literally like looking at me, but still be so friendly about it. But it was just kind of shocking to me, almost like scary, because she just trails me everywhere I go. I can see her eyes just looking at me. But I think it also shows like this, the community relationship with getting their photographs taken. Yeah, so after that conversation, I made a photograph of her. Yeah. So it's such an interesting like yard sale, which to me is like so Americana, and being from the Midwest, it's like, oh, this is what you do every summer. Yeah.
I did. Thanks. I've got actually two questions for Matthew. I'll just ask them back to back. Is the project finished? So, like, whenever I'm searching on Ancestry, there's always one more leaf and one more leaf to keep you enticed to keep your subscription. But can you see finding more pictures, sourcing more pictures, and adding another chapter or another revelation? And, maybe the story goes in different directions, but still with the overall intent. And then, second question is for your sourcing, especially on eBay. Do you just look at
collections, portfolios of pictures that people aggregate, or do you have specific search terms that you make this into a minor descriptive search? Thank you. Yes, I feel like I'm mostly done with this project. I, if I may do more projects using vernacular photos, found photos in the future. And if I happen to come across one that I think would be great for this project, I may still pull it in. But I don't think I'm actively looking for images for this project anymore. There are over 200 images in the book. So I kind of feel like I've hit almost all the beats that I could. And as I looked, more and more towards the end, it was a lot of repetition if I came across images, because I had gotten, most of the types. Um, and as far as searching, I mostly searched under gay vintage photo. Those were the words that I used, to be slightly specific, but also leave it open. And then every now and then I would switch it up with just like, two men, vintage photo. I found using vintage photo was important because I wanted them to be of a certain time period, and not have any modern ones in there. But it is also, it's like searching through the sand, because you put gay vintage photo and you're getting pictures of a dog, of, someone's car. Like, you still get a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with what you're searching for. Um, so I did. Yes, I did. I learned. Yeah, I learned that there's a whole collector base of anything kind of like these images that is remotely queer, um, that people collect them for their own collections, and a lot of them have deeper pockets than I do. So I did lose out a number of times, which was frustrating, but I still came away with a lot of good ones. Um, but yeah, artists that work in the same field are collecting, and then people just for their private collections. And I think it has to do with that lack of history, that we have. Gay people in the past just didn't take those pictures out of fear of what could happen to them if they were seen. So there's a hunger for that kind of connection to a history.
Hey guys. Okay, Leonard, question about the images that we're seeing here. You mentioned the human to human contact, and I'm seeing how you positioned not just your family, but then some of the people, at these other events. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've positioned them? There's the layering. What's the symbolism of the touching and the movement, the form of the bodies, and I guess the through line from your project to the New York Magazine project.
Yeah. I feel like when I did the yard sale photos, I really had to rely on my education and confidence, because there's not much thinking that I can do because time is so limited. Not only do I have limited time with each person, I also had to drive 700 miles to catch the end of the yard sale because it only happens for 4 days. So I think when I was making the photos, it was really just about quick observation and making sure, okay, let's not stand against the harsh light, figure out which corner. But then when I approach the people, I also know the light is great here. I just need to bring my reflector to make everything pops. So it really becomes this like egg hunting photo experience where I couldn't really like plan a lot. I had to just trust my instincts. And I think the way that I've been making work has always been inspired by the people. So sometimes it's like inside jokes, or sometimes it's like something that my dad said that I just didn't like, and I need to process that and make it into a photograph. Um, and for example, like this photo of my husband carrying the weight of my family, it's because, I mean, it's because I'm here with him. That's why I can stay in this country. But then also, to my family at the time, he was just this white friend who also loves art making. So to me, of course, I want them to be like family. So I had to like devise this like photo shoot so then they can be in close proximity with each other. Um, so I feel like the way that I frame things have always been about communicating who the subjects are to me, but then knowing that this is not a documentation of them because this is essentially a role that they're playing as my family. And I feel like um, the thesis that I learned from working on this work is that family can come to you through inheritance, through harmony, but in reality, that doesn't apply everywhere, you know? But to me, family is this endurance of wanting to stay bound to one another, and we do the work to stay connected. And that's been my experience with my family because I only see them once a year. And, you know, I can easily just like shut them out and just be free here, but then that doesn't feel right to me either. But every time when I'm with them, I'm also like, oh, I need my own space. I don't want to be your son living with you in the same house and we have to eat at the same time together. But that's why I feel like, yeah, family can come with harmony, family can comes from rupture, but at the end of the day, it's a matter of if you want to do the work or not to stay connected. And I feel like that's what I learned from working with my family this whole time. Yeah, and I feel like the way that the photographs uh, are created comes from that understanding that the photo frame is just a stage or an altar. And I feel like I love seeing things in order. Maybe that's my tick, you know, but that makes me so good at using 4x5 because there's that sense of pleasure seeing things organized nicely and then with nice colors. So I feel like that's what I get to offer from my upbringing in Indonesia with all of its confusion. Yeah.
For Matthew, I was just wondering if you've ever had any exchanges with the subjects of or relatives of your photos and how your work has been received, if so.
I am not. Most of them didn't come with any information on them on the photograph itself, and they're all, from what I can gather, from a secondary party, whether it's a relative or just someone who's collected the images at the local thrift store. So I have not had any interactions. Um, and no one thus far has come up to me saying, I know someone in one of the photos. So no, and I haven't, for the few that have like a name or something associated, I haven't done any digging yet. Partially just because it's not about that person. It's about a whole different character that I'm overlaying onto that image. Um, so no, not yet. And hopefully no one does recognize someone and has a problem with it. I hope. But we'll see.
Any more questions? Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you both for sharing. please take a look at the show. Matthew has some of his books here, so we're doing a book signing as well. So please stay for that if you're interested.